So the USA and Ukraine are having a little bit of a spat over minerals. And let's be honest, this isn't a new thing for the United States. The United States always had a policy of getting involved with wars or going to war for the specific reason of getting minerals. I'm sure that Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, whoever would have been the opposite to Donald Trump had they won the election, would have gone about trying to extract minerals from Ukraine. However, the way they did it was different. So, going off this Guardian headline, Donald Trump wants 50% cut of Ukraine's mineral riches in return for peace. It's been widely reported that Donald Trump has basically been calling Zelensky a dictator because he won't give him his minerals. He won't, give him over the key minerals the United States needs going forward to ensure their economy, especially when competing with China, who has many minerals that the United States needs to continue their growth of capitalism. It is well known that the United States doesn't have certain materials China has. For example, materials to make semiconductors and materials to make chips. China has in abundance compared to the United States. So as you can see here, the privileged and confidential contract dated 7th of February also reportedly covers the economic value associated with the resources of Ukraine, including mineral resources, oil and gas resources, ports and other infrastructure as agreed. The proposed agreement means the US will take 50% of recurring revenue received by Ukraine from extraction of resources and 50% of the financial value of all new licenses issued to third parties for the future monetization of resources, according to the Tory graph. So this contract was written up by private lawyers, not by the US State Department, because basically the way Donald Trump is trying to run his government now is basically doing it through private means more so than through State Department, because private means is less oversight compared. And to be honest, the Democrats don't care anyway. The Democrats probably would have done the same thing, but done it through the State Department and had maybe a little bit of pushback, but eventually have gone through. But this 50% of financial value is crazy. The United States does this all the time. Whenever they get involved with another country, they do it on the basis that they are going to make money out of it. So it's basically on all of these rare metals that Ukraine has access to that the United States doesn't. Ukraine has always kind of spoken about how they have so much access to rare metals. They have, so much minerals that have untapped potential. So the US Geological Survey considers 50 minerals to be critical, including several types of rare earth, nickel and lithium. Ukraine has deposits of 22 of the 34 minerals identified by the European Union as critical, according to Economic Ministry data. This includes industrial and construction materials, ferroalloy, precious and non-ferrous metal, and some rare earth metals. Basically, Ukraine is a perfect place for these big Western economies, and this includes Russia as well, to, expand their just control over the economy, because these sort of metals are going to be needed for continued creation of consumer goods, and we know that consumerism is basically the main way that the United States has stayed on top, and it is actually in part the reason why China's catching up, because US consumerism and Western consumerism is so high that now China can take advantage of that to build their economy, even though it's probably not the best thing for China to be doing, and even the Western nations probably not the best for them to be relying on this consumerism, because eventually we're just going to run out of the means to be able to do it. Just the economic squeeze the working class and even the supposed middle class are feeling, that's going to mean we're going to be consuming less and less, even though these minerals are meant to be extracted so they can make it easier for us to consume more. It's just the inevitable squeeze of capitalism where the profits need to go up, but also the pay for us needs to go down. So those two things just collide with each other, but that's a whole other video. Basically, Ukraine has key minerals the United States wants. I'm pretty sure the way the Biden administration or Harris administration probably would have gone about this is they would have tried to negotiate for peace, probably done it far less openly the way that Donald Trump is doing it, because that's Donald Trump's appeal. He's a cult of personality. He needs to be front and center to ensure his power. The Democrats probably would have tried to do this through private businesses and through State Department approved contracts. So they would have spoken to Ukraine and been like, hey, look, X, Y, and Z company from the United States is going to be the ones extracting this. We're going to tax that company, so we're going to get income off it. Also, us as politicians have investments in these companies, so we're going to make money off them as well. Maybe it wouldn't be as high as this, 50% of the recurring revenue. Maybe it would have been 20, 30%, maybe a little bit less. But it would have been there. I think Donald Trump is probably doing this negotiation tactic of, I'm going to start at 50%. I'm going to bring it down to about 30 and everyone will be happy. Well, Ukraine probably won't be happy, but the US will be happy with that. And it's... this thing in particular, all new licenses issued to third parties, that's crazy. Especially if it's a European third party. And who's involved in it. This is a far less good way of doing this, because the US has had success with this in the past, and we'll go on to those examples and kind of look into it as well. But this is very much standard for US foreign policy. If we look at CNN, they are talking about a similar thing here, a staggering US reversal. Well, it's not really a reversal. It's more so the United States has been less open about doing this compared to Donald Trump's openness about just trying to extract minerals. The United States has always extracted minerals, even from its own allies. Like, Ukraine is supposed to be an ally. The United States has extracted minerals and resources. Like, Zelensky's gonna put up a fight about it because he probably, I don't know, he might genuinely have been under the impression that the United States wasn't going to try and take him for a ride. Maybe the way the Biden-Harris campaign, well, more so Biden, was treating this was like, listen, Jack, we're just here to help you. So I'm not too sure with that. I don't know how the Democrats are going about it with Zelensky. I'm not in the room. But maybe just the way the Democrats are dealing with him was very much like, nah, don't worry about it. We're just gonna maybe get a little bit of money from you. We're gonna get our businesses to invest in Ukraine afterwards to help the Ukrainian economy. And coincidentally, that's gonna have a knock-on effect and help the US economy. Whereas Donald Trump is just like, nah, brother, just give me the money. Which, again, he just doesn't have the political machinations that other politicians have. Or at least if he does, he's decided his brand isn't to do that. Which I guess for him works when it comes to winning elections. But when it comes to actually implementing foreign policy, maybe less so. So a key example of this was the Korean War. It was over tungsten. The United States entered contracts with Korea to get access to their tungsten mines and get more tungsten relatively cheaply. So just even this opening part of the background is actually quite interesting. On the 28th of March 1952, the United States entered into a tungsten agreement with the Republic of Korea, ROK, under which the United States undertook to A, purchase all the tungsten offered by ROK under terms specified in a separate purchase agreement, furnish supplies, equipment, and technical assistance on a reimbursable basis, furnish on a grant basic mode of transportation to and from the mines, assist the ROK in the negotiation and administration of a management contract with a mutually acceptable company. Basically, the United States is setting up this tungsten mine and they're getting basically first dibs on the tungsten. If we go to the bottom here, there's recommendations from Ambassador Yang. Funds for the continuation of the purchase of Korean tungsten at the present contract price or even at a reduced price do not exist. Therefore, the purchase contract, which probably will expire on April 1st, 1954, will not be renewed by the US as stated by Mr. Wood in November 1953. The tungsten industry must be preserved, however, and the United States wishes to extend such assistance as it can by furnishing qualified people to aid in marketing tungsten and, if necessary, to aid in improving the efficiency of the industry. It is important for the long-run health of the industry that it face world competition and embark upon a plan to reduce costs. this probably will involve capital improvements over a period of years. As a temporary measure, it is conceivable that the government subsidies may be necessary. It is considered that the purchase of tungsten as a form of economic aid is a less effective use of aid funds than their use for imports of an investment nature, since it probably would result in reduced incentive for the industry to reduce costs to meet world market prices. So basically, the United States was like, we want your tungsten, but it's getting a bit expensive to get the tungsten, which is why they were, prepared to help Korea get involved with building the tungsten and getting supplies of it, because tungsten was imperative to basically world economies at the time, not just the war effort, but also the industrial effort and the commercial effort. So like a purchase contract was entered into simultaneously to last 5 years or until 15,000 short tons. I think that's 15,000 short tons of tungsten had been purchased. Under this contract, the US agreed to pay $65 a ton for the first 2 years, with the price to be renegotiated to a level directly related to the world price level at the end of the 2-year period. So basically, the United States was like, we can get your tungsten, but we'll pay for it, but maybe it will be a good deal for us, and we'll help you set up the industry. It's kind of similar to what they want to do in Ukraine. They basically want, first dibs. They'll help pay to initialize it. They'll get a good price for it. And then, who knows long term what they're going to do basically here in the recommendations. And it's basically kind of what the United States is looking at doing with Ukraine. This is an extract from Mineral for Empire, US Mining of South Korean Tungsten. This part is quite interesting. Once South Korean workers mine tungsten, the US engineers will also help transport the tungsten to military installations for strategic mineral stockpiles across the United States. The US stockpile of tungsten was one of the rare pieces of good news for South Korea during the war. So basically, the US was like, we're going to just stock up on tungsten off Korea, and Korea kind of needs the money for this, so it's a win-win. Korea gets the money and we get our tungsten. Basically what the US is doing now with Ukraine is, Ukraine, you need to rebuild and we get the money. It's a win-win, even though kind of the 50% thing is a lot comparatively. And whereas, now they're trying to sue for peace with Russia, then the US is just like, we're just going to support you fight the communists, even though we're kind of the reason why this whole thing is happening in the first place. And I think the one everyone talks about, the Iraq War, which was the US basically being like, hey guys, we can get like good oil contracts here, let's do it. And the US and the UK were basically like at loggerheads at this. So like the opening is, the US and British governments fought bitterly over control for Iraq's oil following the toppling of Saddam Hussein, the Chilcot Papers show. Tony Blair seemed more concerned than the Americans about any invasion being seen by critics as a war for oil, telling them that it would be very damaging if the two countries were seen to grab Iraq's oils. Which, to be honest, Tony Blair's legacy is he sent us to Iraq for oil. That and like he won a landslide election. But, it's kind of like Keir Starmer's case, where Keir Starmer's gonna win a landslide election because the Tories fucked up so badly. Blair was inevitably going to win a landslide. And I think near the end, it's quite interesting. And here, it's like these two paragraphs. Blair had told US President George W. Bush at a meeting mid-invasion on the 31st of March 2003 that a clearer picture was needed of the shape of a post-Saddam's Iraq to sketch out a political and economic failure and dispel the myth that we were out to grab Iraq's oils. Yet, a civil service briefing note in the same year for Jeff Hoon, then the UK Defence Secretary, before talks with his US counterpart, Donald Rumsfeld, discussing the need for level playing field, big contracts to rebuild Iraq, putting UK lives online, that doesn't make sense. Expect level playing field for UK business in oil and other areas. basically the UK were like, listen, we joined you for this grab for oil. You need to make it worth our while. Because Tony Blair was concerned about the optics, rightfully so. The Labour Party is still, to this day, basically seen as the party that sent us to war for oil. And Jeff Roon was like, listen, we are basically being the party that went to war for oil. You need to make sure UK businesses also benefit from this oil grab. Again, US foreign policy is always, let's try and get involved in these wars, get involved with these countries, and see how we can extract their wealth. In the most recent times, it's been mostly mineral and natural resource wealth. But in the past, for example, if we're looking at places like Hawaii, it was for land, for fruit and growing things. US foreign policy is, and God, for the foreseeable future, always will be a grab for oil or a grab for materials and a grab to ensure US companies can continue their mass consumerism, can continue to exploit resources to make more money, for the shareholders and make more money for the politicians who very openly have very big investments and vested interest in these companies doing well. It is like so strange seeing that we can openly see which US politicians own what and see how their policies, both foreign and domestic, like greatly benefit from those policies. It is crazy. So, US foreign policy has always and always will be about extracting wealth from both allies and people who are their supposed enemies. The United States' foreign policy is always and always has been about ensuring wealth and ensuring capital for US business.